This is the Benefits Buzz Podcast, your weekly pulse on what's happening in the world of employee benefits. Brought to you by your friends at WEX, who believe in simplifying benefits for everyone. Now listen up and let's get buzzed! Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Benefits Buzz. I'm your co-host, Eric Pilla, and I'm joined by this guy, Hayden Goethe. Hayden, we got a funky, special, awkward, fun episode in line, don't we?
Yeah, nothing says awkward quite like calling out awkward.
That's when you know it's really awkward, when you self-identify. And the only reason I say it's awkward because we actually don't have a guest. It's just you and I.
Yep, that's it. But we do have guests.
We do. You're right.
It's just they're not live. They're not here, right here and now.
You're right. We probably should explain ourselves, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so we at Benefits Buzz have just eclipsed a gigantic milestone that we're ecstatic about. And that is we have over 25,000 engagements with our podcast. Whoop, whoop.
Can you believe it?
Cue the air horn.
I did the visual.
You did the visual.
The
Yeah,
noise.
thank you for those that don't. Yeah. And we couldn't be more excited. And we thought, what would be a cool idea for an episode? Because we were actually reminiscing about all the different shows we've done and all the
You're a
guests.
sentimental type.
We were. We
Get a little nostalgic.
Nostalgic, right? And we're like, you know what we should do? We should highlight, because there've been so many great dialogues and so many awesome bits of information and that we've covered that we should highlight those. And so we've kind of gone through, listened, and pulled out what we feel are kind of our top 5 favorite takeaways.
Yeah, because I feel like when we're recording these, I mean, even now we're recording episodes and there are these underlying themes in these episodes all the time. And so why not call them out? We've gotten to this point, 25,000 plus listens and views. Why not call them out? Because we're seeing them all the time. So we're like our own guests here.
We are.
We're the thought leaders on this episode.
Oh, that's dangerous. And the only reason that we've gotten to that many listens and downloads and watches is because people have been giving reviews. So please, this is my shameless plug. If you love this podcast, we would love for you to go onto Apple Podcasts and give us a review. Let us know it's the best way for other HR pros like yourself to discover the podcast so we can grow that number to 50K, 100K, and beyond. We have big aspirations, don't we?
We sure do.
All right. Well, let's jump into our top 5 takeaways from our podcast. Number 1, we've got some really good notes on this too. So the first one that I want to talk about really is about HSA behavior. One of the things that's always near and dear to our hearts, right, are HSAs.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done a lot of episodes on HSAs, even from HSA Day last season, right, to even an episode we just did on HSAs and really the behavior and usage of HSAs. And we have a great topic. I think the beauty of HSAs is it's so evergreen, right? Like there's always another nuance of an HSA, feature or benefit that we can dive into. And I think this was a really fun one.
It was, yeah. I mean, I think the underlying thing with HSAs, again, it's the power of choice. I mean, you can engage in an HSA any way you want to. You want to save money now, you can do that. You want to invest money, you can do that. If you want to save for retirement, you can do that. Like there's so many different things you can do with it. It's kind of this like microcosm of like the larger benefits package because it does suit so many needs. So
very true. And you can say that of a couple of our like LSAs as well, right? Yep. So that's kind of a theme there. I like that, the power of choice. And so we actually have a featured clip that we've got actually from season 5. So just a couple episodes ago with Chris Bird was our guest.
Yes. Frequent guest, Chris Bird. And he was here to basically just talk about how employees are engaging with those health savings accounts.
That's really important to know, like what is the best way to position these and what are people doing? How are they using HSAs so that you can better communicate? So let's jump to that clip right now of Chris.
I think it's okay to say we're getting it wrong or that we've gotten it wrong. Let's be hard on ourselves, right?
Sure.
But it's the flip side of that, right? We've almost been single-threaded in the HSA world on investing in retirement and the long-term benefits of this. But the reality is that the vast majority of people today do not use health savings accounts in that way. And quite frankly, if you look across a population in a typical employer, unless you're a law firm or something like that, right, that has nothing but high-income people, you've got a whole diversity of population out there, from people who can comfortably save for retirement to people who are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, right? So there is no single prototypical HSA account holder, HSA user, right? They vary in income, in the amount of liquid savings they have, their age, the size of their household, ethnicity, even risk tolerance, right? And so, it's really, really important. And I think we need, as an industry, to start realizing and paying more attention to a balanced message that encompasses the broad diversity of that audience and targets various messages to people depending on not only who they are, but where they are on their journey.
It's so good. It's so good to visit these again. And Chris does it so well. Again, I think he's like a 5-timer on our podcast. And there's a reason why he deserves that green jacket, because he is just a remarkable way of positioning things and communicating things that just is so relevant, right?
Yeah, and nobody has a better pulse on the employee benefit space than Chris Bird, which, I mean, he's practically the third co-host of this show. So.
If one of us get randomly struck by a bus, we know who will be stepping in.
I think he's probably done more episodes than I have at this point. So
I don't know about that. Well, that was fun. So let's jump into our second one, okay? And a theme that we know that's obviously emerged. Boy, we've been doing this podcast for 3 or 4 years, and 2 of those years have been during the pandemic.
Right.
And one of the biggest things that we know has been retention and the Great Resignation. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion in the last 2 years of our podcast about that, and how do we focus on keeping and retaining and really being mindful of what our employees are going through during this time. And so I think when it comes to recruitment dogfight, the big question is, how do you stand out?
Right, exactly. And here again, like the power of choice, but choice isn't just limited to benefits. Choice is also limited to how we work and where we work and when we work. And so, having somebody like, Melanie Tinto on and some of the other HR leaders that we've had on throughout the last few seasons has been really, powerful to communicate that. And it's only become more important and more relevant in the last couple of years, like you said, because we have undergone so much change.
We have, and we've had some guests that have had some really great insights about how the recruitment game has changed, right? And how you take care of employees. And so we're going to jump to one of our clips from Melanie Tinto, who is our CHRO here at WEX. It's hard for me to say for some reason. So many acronyms in our business. CHRO. We'll jump to that clip. It's a really fun episode.
Our philosophy has evolved. We've always had that optionality around the ability to work from home. I think historically we were predominantly in office environment. And part of that was just, again, who we are, our culture, our DNA, how decisions got made, and also even our utilization of technology. We tended to be more of an in-person walk across the hall and talk to our employees. I think what we've learned through COVID is, first of all, we're a more highly inclusive environment around the globe by working in a virtual setting. We do understand that the video can be exhausting for people. And so how do we start being able to balance the in-person and the video as well? And so I think there's been a better appreciation around the fact that you work just as hard, if not harder, when you're at home than you do in the office. And sometimes you even forget to take breaks that are so necessary, back to the mental wellness, well-being and health question. And so when I think about the piece that came up the most, I think the surprise for many people was the myth of, if you're at home, you're just not working as hard, right? That person must not be working as hard because they're not visible in the office. And I think we've proven over the last year that people are as equally or more productive than when they're at home, and they're able to work, live, and thrive because they're able to balance all the needs of themselves, their family, and the goals and objectives that are set forth by the company. And so I'm really proud of that, and proud of the commitment of our employees. I also think, like probably many of your HR leaders that are on the call today, 99.9% of employees want to do a good job. They want to be accountable. They want to know what they need to deliver, and they expect to do that. And no one comes into work saying, I want to do a bad job. Why would we expect anyone to operate differently at home? And so I think it's really become an appreciation of trust and a reinforcement of those values, and the commitment between a manager and the employee around how they engage in dialogue and conversation on that topic of where, when, and how you work. And so when I think about the office of the future for WEX in particular, it's never going to be full-time remote, as I mentioned. It's likely going to be somewhere hybrid. I think that conversation is going to evolve over the next 6 to 12 months. And we'll likely balance into some type of happy medium of in office when it's appropriate, more collaboration in office, and then also some work time that might be at home because it's dedicated think time, quiet time, or the ability to really just focus. I think that'll be what we see in the future for some of our Wexers. But I want to play that out over time and see what we actually evolve to.
That was really fun to hear. And I forget about all the different ways when we think about working from home and the hybrid environment and everything that really employers are forced with. We actually at Wex just got sent a survey about how do you want to work?
Yeah.
Right. Because we've been remote and the office is kind of open now, as you can see. For those of you watching, we're back in the office for the last couple episodes. But they asked us, how do you want to work now in the future? And I think all companies are figuring that out.
Well, I know. And the interesting thing about that episode is I remember when we were recording that episode, at the time it was so timely and so topical. And yet somehow, even like a full season later, it's still extremely like relevant and evergreen content, because we're still having these conversations 1 year later about how do we want to work? Where do we want to work?
I know.
What's the appropriate time to start having those conversations with employees? How do you have those conversations with employees?
And the sad thing is, then again, I don't know if it's going away. I think if anything, those conversations, we knew that they were coming, but now I think for a lot of companies, we're at that decision point, right? Where we have to figure out what do we do. So it's great. All right. Drum roll. We'll keep going along here with our list of top 5. The next one is, of course, mental health. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think we could do a top 5 roundup without mental health. We had a couple of episodes that have been really focused on how do you just keep the pulse on how your employees are doing? How are they handling the struggles that came with working from home and parenting? And we actually just did a great episode on those circles, right? Talked about the 3-ring circus that we have going on in our life with relationship, work, and personal, and how do we juggle those things? And I think burnout is a real thing. So being mindful of mental health is really important.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like this month being Mental Health Awareness Month. So, that's a topic that, we've hit on quite a bit over the last few seasons with the podcast. It's something that's definitely like on our radar for season 5 as well. So, but yeah, I mean, the data is there, right? Like we've just seen increases in mental and behavioral health requests. And so it's a vitally important topic.
Speaking of requests, you always do such great data digging. Requests have increased 100%, I think, from last year at the time. So I think we're all seeing that. And so I think it's a great thing to call out. And of course, why it made the top 5. And so this is a great clip of Kate and Trevor, who are in season 4, really talking about mental health and how do we address that with their employees.
Yep.
Let's listen now.
It's hard to say if we're seeing more calls related to that, but it's interesting. I was looking at something recently, and it was a survey that showed something like 30 to 40% of employees said they would look for other work if they had to go back full time.
Wow.
And
It's surprising, but not surprising, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's super powerful. And I do think that is what we've seen. So I think like most companies, and, I've done a lot of networking, I think companies aren't making these decisions in silos. Like they are looking at, industry, they are taking employee pulse surveys, similar to what Wex has done. I do think, shifting when we were all hearing all about COVID and shifting kind of to the work from home, Wex did a really good job, I would say, from the IT infrastructure with our customer service folks doing virtual ergo support, setting up, for those essential workers, screenings in place in partnership with a medical provider, doing kind of our monthly COVID newsletters and employee newsletters. And so I think employees had a lot of support and continue to have a lot of support. And that I think just goes to Wex's culture and in our philosophy with really supporting our employees no matter what is going on. So right now it's, with COVID, but it could be a natural disaster at a certain state and we've got to, engage there. But what we are seeing is now through I think we've done 4 employee surveys on kind of the reentry to work. And it is, it's shifting our culture, which is, I think, an exciting thing, right? And so we've been super successful. And now we have to support those employees as we do engage back to what does the new reentry to work look like.
That was awesome. Again, like such timely content. And, again, like you see kind of these underlying themes, like we were talking about flexible work arrangements already. And now it comes back into the fold here as well with the mental health conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm so glad to be able to feature that one again. It's so crazy how Again, maybe some of these episodes are a year old, but they're still as relevant as ever. And
I know.
that's why
We're-
we
we're
did
s-
this.
Yeah, we're still talking about all of these.
We are. Here we are. I know, months later talking about it. All right. The next theme, number 4 on the list, has got to be communication, right? Whether it's an episode on how, right? We had a whole episode on how do you talk about open enrollment all year long, right? Remember that episode we did just this season, right? We did a great episode where if you're like me, right, it's really easy to ignore emails that you get. Like, yeah, I'll get to that later. But when they come to HR and open enrollment or any kind of communication that comes from your HR department, how do you make sure that your content gets read? Because we know, that in HR, the most annoying thing is when someone asks about a benefit or something, when you've communicated that value at least 4 or 5 times, it's sitting in their inbox and they didn't read it, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I forget, Kelsey said something, put this in really good terms, which is basically like a benefit that's not adopted is benefit miscommunicated or vice versa. Something like that.
No, it's very true. Totally.
Like if you don't land the communication piece, basically like the value of the benefits you're offering just isn't there.
Right.
And that isn't, just limited to benefits either, but of course, benefits being, a big part of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And so the key being, if you are not concise, if you are not creative in how you're communicating your benefits, right? Whether it be the enrollment piece of it or how they're utilizing it, what they should be doing with their benefits, again, you're missing a huge opportunity for them to really engage with their benefits, which is what we all want. I think the way in which you deliver it is almost as important as the content that you have and making sure it's short and digestible, right? We did an episode, you and Emma, right, who were guests, did an episode on how to write communications, but also even if you look at the way in which we set up our own podcasts that we've done, right? Like
you got to chunk that out.
You got to chunk it out too. We have like our top 7 takeaways or top 7 uses for HSAs. So Hayden, cue this up. What's the clip that we've got coming up here?
Yeah, so we did an open enrollment series in season 1. We did another one again last season in season 4. And so that was just basically to, break down for participants, like here are X amount of things you need to know about medical FSA, HSA. So the clip we've got here is one of the 7 facts about a dependent care FSA, which is one of our many popular benefits. So
great, let's listen to that now. Number 1 is going to be, of course, the most obvious question. We want to know what expenses and whose expenses are eligible under a dependent care FSA.
Yeah, this is exciting. So obviously the first thing that comes to mind is childcare and daycare expenses. So anything like a daycare center, home daycares, babysitters, nannies, but even like a day camp. So if you're sending your kiddo to a soccer camp for a day, those expenses are eligible as well. And then less commonly known, but also still eligible, is care provided for a disabled spouse or dependent of any age. So those are also eligible under this plan.
Yeah, those are fun. And actually, some of those participant ones, those kind of pass through that we do are my favorite episodes. One, because I think they're quick, they're meaty in terms of like there's really good tangible content that everyone can use. And guess what? It's no surprise. Yes, we have 25,000 listens, right? But not all of our podcasts have the same quantity. But our favorite episodes, the most listened episodes, are the ones where we break those out, right? Those quick 7 hits. And so it's no surprise.
Yeah, it's good information for employers, but they're also able to leverage it with their participants for open enrollment. So
yeah,
win-win.
Win-win for sure. And our final theme for our last couple of seasons, I'm excited about this one. With anything, right? Whether you're in HR, or you're in marketing, or you're in sales, whatever your industry, a big part of what we actually do is storytelling, right? So how do we make what we communicate interesting? And I think sometimes if we just lead with the facts, that's great, but you have to create some spirit and motivation in it. And I think one of our most memorable episodes, and someone who did an amazing job about storytelling and how you breathe passion into what you do so that other people feel that, is, of course, Diana Naya.
I know, unrivaled in terms of energy she brought. No offense, Eric, because you're obviously an energetic guy too.
Put me to shame. It was wild. I loved it.
She definitely gave us some things that we could follow as podcast hosts too. But she was so passionate about, whether it was like athletics and some of her athletic accomplishments, but her career is so much more than that. I mean, she's a great public speaker. She's a great writer. And she had a ton of, really good, valuable insight for like businesses too, and where she sees success in businesses. So
Yeah,
it was great.
It was awesome. Let's jump to that now.
Might sound a bit airy-fairy, but I've worked with a number of different organizations and known a lot of the HR professionals at those organizations. And the best ones to me are the ones who have, of course, they have to work within the guidelines of their company, of course. But beyond that, deeper than that, the ones I know who have been very, purposeful and successful have almost taken on the role of psychologists. So they sit down with someone. Are you having family problems? I know you don't want to talk about it, but that's probably at the root of what's happening with you here at the office. Are you afraid of working something out face to face with someone? You don't like conflict, or you're so angry at that person it's going to come out wrong. Let's try it. Let's come on in together, that person and your person, and leave everything on the table. It's okay in here to say it out loud, and maybe you'll work through it. So I think that this word resilience, and let's relate it particularly to the pandemic times, means things aren't going the way they were supposed to. Isn't that the definition of what's happened to us this last year? So usually if someone's gone in with a complaint or an ask for help to an HR professional, they're saying things aren't the way I wanted them to be in my job. I'm experiencing conflict. I'm unhappy. How can I resolve this? So the object of resilience is to reach down, is to get open in your mind and your heart. And an HR professional can help you say, let's just, forget all the anger right now. Let's really get to the bottom of what's going on here. And I bet you're smart. You want to stay in this job. Let's get to the bottom of it, and we'll be fair with you. You just be open with me to start with and trust me. So I'm not telling any HR professional anything new, but that's to use a silly example with the Cuba swim, I failed at it 4 times, almost lost my life. No hyperbole, 1 time, but our team would quickly come back together. As a matter of fact, I'd be on the boat, after we didn't make it, writhing in pain, and I'd reach up and yell to the shark divers and Bonnie, say, you know what we got to do next time, you guys? We got to do some more research on those box jellyfish, and we got to get through them. And they would say, could you give us a lousy 24 hours? We just worked for a year. We just suffered through 45 hours of your swimming. So, maybe it takes a beat after you've been down to rise up again. But I think the whole idea is that things don't go the way we want. And isn't that the definition of life? We all suffer heartache. We all suffer defeat. We all suffer huge disappointments. It's the way life goes. So that's what HR is about. Things aren't going smoothly. You wouldn't be in talking to HR if everything was sailing smoothly. Let's be resilient. Let's reach down to what you've got inside you. We'll reach down and see what the company can do for you, and let's move forward,
Man, every time I listen to Diana, I feel like when I'm done, I could just run through a brick wall. I have so much energy and motivation. I love listening to her.
I kind of want to re-record that podcast. Can we get her back on?
It's like food for the soul. I love that. So if you haven't, that's one of those where I need to go back and just listen to the whole thing because it's so good. I love hearing her story. I love the way she relates. And I think it's the way that she relates. I think it's just really, again, a good reminder for us to find passion individually, but also developing that storytelling in the communications that we create. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, this wasn't quite as awkward as I thought it was going to be. Hayden, just you and I chatting.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think we want to make a habit of this, but
no, but it was a pleasure to kind of go back and visit some of our top episodes and things and some of the takeaways. And I hope that our listeners appreciated that. We've got a really fun series that's going to be coming up next. I'm just going to leave it as a cliffhanger because we've got some live episodes we've got queued up that will happen after this. And so we really thank you and appreciate you listening to this episode. Hope you took away some of those great takeaways from the last 5 seasons of this podcast. It's been a real pleasure, and we look forward to bringing you more episodes next week.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. WEX is in the business of simplifying benefits for everyone. Now, although we certainly hope our podcast sparks some aha moments, like that was pretty cool, but of course we cannot provide legal, investment, or financial advice. And, well, therefore, nothing shared in this podcast should be interpreted as such. We encourage you to seek out appropriate professional advice regarding your plans. Hey, congratulations! You made it through our disclaimer. Thanks for listening.